Lessons number 82, 83, and 84. Alexander II, also known as Alexander the Liberator. Emperor Nicholas I dies during the siege of Sevastopol, leaving his throne to his oldest son, Alexander II. After coronation of Alexander II, wars lasted a few more months, and in 1856, in Congress of Paris, peace union was set among all the countries. The Treaty of Paris of 1856 settled the Crimean War between Russia and the alliance of the Ottoman Empire, the Kingdom of Sardinia, France, and the British Empire. The treaty, signed on March 30th, 1856, at the Congress of Paris, made the Black Sea neutral territory, closing it to all warships and prohibiting fortifications and the presence of armaments on its shores. The treaty marked a severe setback to Russian influence in the region. Early life of Alexander II. His education as a future Tsar was carried out under the supervision of a liberal, romantic poet and gifted translator, Vasily Zakovsky. Zakovsky was idealist and raised little Tsarevich as a liberator of peasants from serf dependence. Tsarevich Alexander II was everywhere with Tsar Nicholas I. Emperor Alexander II became Tsar in a very difficult times in the history of Russia. First thing he did after his coronation went to Sevastopol and thanked to the soldiers and citizens for the fight of the siege of Sevastopol. The biggest achievement of the Emperor Alexander II was the Emancipation reform of 1861 in Russia. Tsar was saying it is better to abolish the serfdom from the top than to wait until the bottom will start liberating on its own, meaning the beginning of the revolution. Everyone was helping in abolishing the serfdom. Graf Rostovsky, Knyaz Cherkovsky, Miltin, Samarin. Russian society was concerned about the upcoming reform and was contemplating whether peasants had to be liberated with or without the ownership of the land. Across the country, committees for improving the peasants' life were created, and in the main office of St. Petersburg, Tsar Alexander II was in charge. Abolishing of the serfdom. February 19th, 1861, Emperor Alexander II signed the Emancipation reform. In all countries, churches, after the liturgy of the manifest was read, which stated, "Cross yourself, Russian people, and ask God for blessing to start your work, your free work." More than 2 million peasants became free. Emancipation reform, accompanied by 17 legislative acts under the general name Regulations Concerning Peasants Leaving Serf Dependence. This manifesto proclaimed an emancipation of the serfs on private estates and of the domestic household serfs. Number 2. Serfs were granted the full rights of free citizens, gaining the rights to marry without having to gain consent, to own property and own a business. Number 3. The manifesto prescribed the peasants would be able to buy the land from the landlords. In their regions, it took peasants nearly 20 years to obtain their land. Many were forced to pay more than land was worth, and others were gained inadequate amounts for their needs. Number 4. Newly freed serfs created communities led by male elders. These communities were called a mir. Each mir had a power to distribute the land given to them by the Russian government amongst individuals within the community. Due to the community's ownership of the land, as opposed to the individuals, an individual peasant could not sell their portion of land in order to work in the factory in the city. A peasant was required to pay off long-term loans received by the government. The money from these loans was given the primary landowner. The land allotted to the recently freed serfs did not include the best land in the country, which continued to be owned by the nobility. Household serfs were the worst affected as they only gained their freedom and no land. The serfs from private estates were given less land than they needed to survive, which led to civil unrest. The redemption tax was so high that the serfs had to sell all the grain they produced to pay the tax, which left nothing for them to survive on. Landowners also suffered because many of them were deeply in debt and were forced selling of their land, left them also struggling to keep their lavish lifestyle. All this became a good soil for the revolution propaganda.